good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon for the launch of the Innovation Launchpad Network and the launch of this round of the Researchers in Residence call. We've got quite a packed agenda over the next 2 hours, and I'm sure you're interested in hearing the details of the call and the opportunities that it provides over the next 90 minutes or so. So we'll get on straight away with that. My name is Pete Osborne. I'm the director of the Innovation Launchpad Network. And I'm going to be giving an overview about what the network is here to do, alongside some of our colleagues from the EPSRC, Catapult Network, also some of my investigators from the Innovation Launchpad Network this afternoon. So as I said, we've got quite a packed agenda. I'll start off with a quick introduction to the aims and objectives of the network. And then I'm very grateful to be joined by Amanda Chmura from the EPSRC, who's going to be talking about really the importance of innovation and the scheme for the EPSRC and the creation of impact. I'll then go into a little bit more detail about the scheme itself and what we're aiming to achieve with that this year and some of the ways of getting involved. And then we'll be joined by representatives of each of the 9 catapults who are going to be talking about their activities, their particular areas of interest, and also some of them are going to give some case studies of how they've worked with researchers and academics across the UK historically. Once we've covered all of those areas, we're going to be joined by Ash Tiwari, and Ash was one of the original Catapult Fellows who worked with HVO Catapult from around about 2013, 2014. So he's going to give us the wealth or his understanding and experience of how he took part in a similar scheme to the Researchers in Residence previously. Perhaps more importantly, what effect it had on his career and how that's allowed his career to develop since then. And then finally, we're going to go into really what are the next steps. So if you're interested in applying to the scheme, what do you need to do? And we'll give you the timing for that. And then at the end, we've got an opportunity for any questions, and hopefully we can answer any questions that you might have. We've hopefully preempted some of those already, and I'm sure you're going to have some additional questions that you want to try and ask. Longer term, hopefully some of these will be answered on our website. We've had a slight issue in that it took slightly longer to get the website's address registered than we were hoping, but that will be going live in the next couple of days. We got approval for yesterday, so we just need to get the data up there now and uploaded. But hopefully we'll fill in lots of the gaps or lots of the questions that you might have in the webinar over the next 2 hours or so, and then if you've got any extra questions, you can get in touch. So first of all, we'll start off with a little bit about the network. Well, what are we here to do? Well, we're quite lucky that we've had quite a significant amount of funding from the EPSRC to help bring together you guys, so leading universities, the Catapult Network, a variety of regional innovation systems, really with the goal to enrich the exchange of ideas and knowledge between those organisations. I think we're quite lucky in the UK that there's quite a wide range of really top-level research going on across the universities that we have here. And I think we'd all like to create more impact from that. We want to make sure that we create the maximum value from all of that research. So the network has been put together to do just that. We're quite lucky to have broad geographical representation across the network, with 3 of the 4 home nations represented across our scientific advisory panels. And we've got a wealth of experience across the 3 thematic areas covered by the network of net zero and sustainability, health and well-being, and resilience. And really, it's hoped that the network is going to provide a key role in putting together a pipeline of new understanding from the universities into the Catapult Network by putting together cross-functional teams, which include both academics and researchers working to understand and develop new understanding across each of those theme areas, and the various people across the Catapult network who are helping to apply that to solve the wider problems that the nation faces. And the network will help to do that by identifying and creating a range of engagement opportunities, which will hopefully allow people working across academia the opportunity to collaborate with their colleagues across the catapults and grow the maturity of that understanding and the tools, the techniques, and the technologies that are required to diffuse that understanding across the Catapult network. And I think more than ever before, it's a key requirement of the vision of the network to try and enable collaboration between individuals and groups who are yet to engage with the Catapult network. So although it's very welcoming to see a number of people that I've already met on this call to learn about the network, it's equally important for all of you that haven't worked with catapults previously to be here today, because it's you that we'd really like to encourage to work more widely with catapults in the future. So the network has two primary goals. Well, first of all, we want to encourage engagement between academia and the catapults, and our primary mechanism of that is going to be through the Researchers in Residence Awards that we're going to be describing very shortly. But secondary to that, we want to also encourage mobility. We want to encourage people to be able to develop their careers, develop their understanding, and see where that takes them. And also we want to encourage and support knowledge exchange activities, because we recognise that if people are developing knowledge and understanding within their own teams, that has some value, but we can create much broader impact, much broader benefits if we're able to share that more widely and develop it with others as well, because there's been a host of research that's shown that co-creation of that understanding and co-development of solutions has much greater impact than people developing that on their own. And as part of that, the network is going to have four main activities. We'd like to serve as a focal point for integration between the UK's academic community and the Catapult network. We're hopefully going to help to identify future research areas that work on both a Catapult pull and academic push basis, and help to mature those to a level that's appropriate to feed into the Researchers in Residence scheme. We'd obviously like to assist UK academia in creating impact from your research, so hopefully the R&R scheme is going to provide a host of opportunities for you to do that. By working alongside the Catapult network, hopefully you're going to be able to create more impact, which you can use to feed into ref case studies across your universities. And then finally, we'd also like to help in identifying any future fundamental research that's needed to overcome any of the bottlenecks or any of the challenges that are highlighted in these projects. And then hopefully that's going to inspire you all to carry out extra research in your own areas in the future. So I know a number of you will already know about the catapults and the work that they do, but equally appreciate that some of you might be new to the Catapult network. So we have a couple of quick slides here that the Catapult network have provided that explains their work and the work that they do. So I'll run through these very quickly. So the Catapult network is a network of 9 world-leading technology and innovation centres that have been established and work in partnership with Innovate UK. And they work with businesses, with academia, and innovative organisations to transform great ideas into valuable products and services. As I said, there are 9 currently, and we're going to be hearing from representatives of all 9 of those later on. And they cover a broad range of different areas and themes and have a wide geographical spread around the UK. Ultimately, though, their mission is to work with innovators in industry to prove and adopt breakthrough products, processes, services, and technologies. And they do that by providing access to world-class R&D infrastructure, expertise, and capability. They're also there and can support businesses who might have ideas in those areas, whether they're startups coming through universities or whether they're more established organisations that would just like help developing ideas that they have. And over the last 10 years that the Catapults have been in existence, they've supported quite a wide range now of different businesses. We've now had more than 15,000 industry collaborations, worked with over 4,400 academics, have been involved in 810 international projects, and the Catapult Network has grown to have more than 4,600 employees. But ultimately, it's all about accelerating adoption, creating capability and talent, and really accelerating growth in the UK, so that the UK is a much more competitive place globally. Obviously, the Innovation Launchpad Network Plus is here to support that, and as part of that, we're going to be hosting a number of community events each year to create new interdisciplinary research communities, both potential and current researchers in residence. And that's going to include building a number of network-wide events each year in each of the themes to identify what the future opportunities are provided by the research that's going on across academia, and then linking that up with the work that's going on in the catapults. We're also planning on holding a number of focused themed workshops each year to identify the key challenges. And these will run nominally 6 months apart over the course of the year to identify those key challenges and try and link them up with those opportunities. And then ultimately, the outputs for those will be a number of horizon reports which set out the key topics and challenges which can be solved by the wider community that we're working with. I'll give you a brief overview of the team, largely for a point of view of putting in place the contacts here that you might need to know about. So I've introduced myself. I was hoping to be joined today by Dr. Christine Parry, who's our network manager, but unfortunately she's ill, so can't join us. But Christina will be the key contact for the network that many of you will get to know over the next couple of years. I mentioned the 3 themes that are crucial to the network, and we're lucky to be joined by a number of the key theme contacts here. So I think I've seen most of them on the call today, so where they are here, I'll ask them to quickly introduce themselves. But from a net zero perspective, our 2 theme leads here are Fiona Chandley, who is on the call. So Fiona, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, thanks Pete. My name is Fiona Chandley. I'm a Professor of Circular Innovation at the University of Exeter, and I'm one of the directors of the National Interdisciplinary Circular Economy Hub. Great to see so many people on the call.
The second theme lead for Net Zero is Stephen MacArthur from Strathclyde University. Fortunately, we've now got so many people on the call, I can't see whether Stephen has joined us. I don't think he has. Stephen is a Professor of Intelligent Energy Systems, an Associate Principal and Executive Dean of Engineering at the University of Strathclyde, and obviously provides a very important local base for the network in Scotland. I'm juggling screens. All right. From a healthcare and well-being perspective, we've got 2 very established academics in that area. I haven't seen whether Alex did join us, I think, earlier on. So Alex, are you online? Do you want to introduce yourself? Actually, maybe I didn't see Alex join us. And then so Alex is the Diamond Jubilee Chair in Computational Medicine and a Royal Academy Chair in Emerging Technologies at the University of Leeds. And then our second theme lead in this area is Professor Mamoon Azouz. He's the Chair in Translational Neuroscience at the University of Sheffield. He's also the Director of the Gene Therapy Innovation and Manufacturing Centre here, which is just opening. And then our final theme is resilience, and this is an area where we've actually got 3 theme leads. First of which is Professor Ashutosh Tiwari, and Ash I did see join us earlier, so hopefully Ash can introduce himself quickly. Ash will be coming back later to explain a little bit more about his experience of being a Catapult Fellow previously. Although Ash appears to have now dropped off, so hopefully he will be back later. Second of our theme leads here is Professor Ben Hicks. Ben has just appeared. So
I am here, Pete. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Professor Ben Hicks of the University of Bristol, as it says there, Professor of Mechanical Engineering. And over the last 20 years, I've worked a lot with many of you, and there's quite a few familiar names I can see in terms of the attendees today, and worked extensively with various Catapult centres. So really looking forward to working with a network to ensure that the right opportunities for the right people at the right time with the right catapults. So yeah, thank you very much for attending as well. I can see a good number, Pete, 170, which is excellent.
Great. And then the final person I'd like to introduce you to is Professor Paul Jennings. And Paul, again, I can see you online now, so I'll let you introduce yourself, Paul.
Thanks, Pete. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Jennings. I'm the Pro Dean for Research at WMG, Warwick Manufacturing Group at the University of Warwick, where I've also been involved with the WMG Centre for the High Value Manufacturing Catapult since it started many years ago now.
So thank you, everyone. So they're hopefully people that you're going to get to know more over the coming years, and as they're going to provide the touch points essentially for the network alongside Christina and myself. We'll now won't change directly. I'm now going to hand you over to Amanda Chimura from the EPSRC, who's really going to set some of the scene here and talk about why activities like researchers in residence are so important for the EPSRC. So I'll hand over to you, Amanda. I guess if you just tell me when you want the slides advancing, and we'll move through them that way.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Pete, and thank you for the invitation to come and speak today. So as Pete says, my name is Amanda Shimura, and I am Deputy Director in EPSRC with responsibility for our partnerships in impact and impact acceleration and business engagement. So if I could have the next slide, please. I was going to say a little bit about sort of the UKRI strategic objectives and the strategy that was published earlier this year and how this activity fits within that. So for those of you who have read the UKRI strategy, you'll have seen that it's sort of focused around a kind of a number of key areas. So people and careers, in terms of making the UK a really attractive destination for lots of different types of talented people, people in academia, people in industry, and mobility between some of those areas as well. And in terms of place and the kind of regional agenda, securing the UK's position as a globally leading research and innovation nation, but thinking about how that is realized in specific places and across the kind of the breadth of the UK. In terms of ideas, obviously that is the core of what we're doing in UKRI in terms of funding great ideas and the advancement of knowledge, but also thinking about multidisciplinary research there and how kind of new approaches to strategic theme areas and things like that. And then in innovation, delivering the government's vision for the UK as an innovation nation. And that's we definitely see that in EPSRC as we see Innovate UK's role, and obviously the role of the catapults in that. And we see it as a really important task to connect into that, to connect the research and training that is funded by EPSRC into that kind of pipeline. And then impacts in the middle there, focusing very much on taking the UK's world-class science and innovation and using that to target national and global challenges and thinking about sort of high growth technologies in the sectors of the future. And all of that is underpinned by a world-class organization, and that's our kind of more internally facing goal about making sure that UKRI is structured in a way that supports that. So that strategy was published earlier in the year, as I said, and then in the last probably month, 6 weeks, each of the research councils in Innovate UK and Research England have published their own strategic delivery plans, which kind of map on to that structure. So if I can have the next slide, please. that shows EPSRC's kind of the overview of our strategic delivery plan, which we, as I say, have published recently. And I don't plan to go through all of the detail on this slide, but really wanted to focus on the kind of that blue box of innovation. So in terms of our kind of contribution there, we really try very hard to contribute directly to the government's vision for the UK as an innovation nation, and the commitments to ensure the kind of total R&D spending reaches 2.4% of GDP by 2027. Although if you've seen the most updated figures from the ONS, it looks like we're already there at 2.4%. But actually, the longer-term goal was to get to 3%, and I think that people have been talking about that for a while. So we definitely want to play our part in increasing that kind of R&D spending on in the UK. We feel that our strength really lies in the breadth of the investments that we make. Our commitment to innovation really starts from our investment in that discovery, engineering and physical sciences research that is essential to delivering the kind of solutions of tomorrow. And we have done, and we will continue to kind of harness that discovery research to accelerate the translation of research and ideas into tangible outcomes and commercial solutions. And we definitely, although I've kind of talked about the kind of the economic impact here, which is obviously very important to us, we also want to continue to maximize societal, environmental impacts on people's quality of life, et cetera. So that wider definition of impact, but of course the economic impact is very important to us. So we've got, I think, a fair amount of experience in connecting research and innovation, developing and enhancing those connections to create sort of new opportunities and growth, and very much bearing in mind the kind of the place agenda. Doing that in a way that is aligned to local strengths will continue to be an important area for us. And then in terms of the kind of people and careers, we obviously feel that talented, empowered people and teams are at the heart of a thriving research and innovation system. And we want to really encourage the kind of diversity in the academic and business workforce with the right skills. And as part of our business engagement activity is to really kind of understand those kind of skills needs. So through this delivery plan period, so this financial year that we're in and the following 2 years, so that makes up the current delivery plan period, we will look to continue to increase connectivity across the research and innovation system, pulling through research outcomes to sort of be the next technology breakthroughs and business creation opportunities. We will encourage even greater co-creation and co-investment by business into the engineering and physical sciences research base. And as I mentioned earlier on, promotes sort of skills development and mobility across both disciplines, so disciplines within and without engineering and physical sciences research council remit, but also across different career paths. So that's a kind of a quick overview. Our approach to supporting translation and impact in EPSRC is kind of there's two main elements to it. We take an embedded approach. So any funding opportunity that EPSRC puts out there, whether it be a first or a new investigator award, fellowship, a program grant, there's the opportunity to embed impact creation and translation activities into that. And there's plenty of really great examples of things that have come out of that. But there we also recognize that there are specific activities that we need to do as well to kind of to push that agenda along. So if you don't mind moving on to the next slide, it's just a quick overview of some of those specific activities that we support. So many people will have heard of the Prosperity Partnerships activity that we support, which is now there are about 47 of those partnerships out there, where it's a sort of a co-created, co-developed program grant style, so large-scale, long-term funding activity where businesses are key in the development of that. There's a business principal investigator and an academic principal investigator who work together to develop and deliver with obviously a wider team around them. So it's discover science for business benefit, and of course the time scale for that benefit varies depending on the program and the sector and all that sort of thing. We've funded a lot of, or funded several £million worth of innovation knowledge centres alongside other research councils, including EPSRC and Innovate UK, to kind of take novel technologies where there might not be, a market for those, and to really work with businesses to kind of develop a market. The impact acceleration accounts are a big investment. We make about £20 million a year investment in the impact acceleration accounts, which are block grants that we provide to institutions based on their competitively won EPSRC funding to really take forward things that have come out of EPSRC funded research and move them along in terms of translation, working with business partners, with Catapults, with all sorts of partners in the innovation ecosystem. And then there's researchers in residence. So that program really develops new collaborations through research residencies for university academics to work very closely with the Catapult teams, as Pete was saying, to build stronger partnerships in kind of the ecosystem and support the best environment for innovation, and really deliver that translation impact from the engineering and physical sciences investments that we have supported through our portfolio. And obviously for this investment, as Pete has said, the focus is on net zero, healthcare, and well-being, and resilience, and is really built on the successful pilots of researchers in residence that we ran previously in the kind of sort of digital space. So I was just going to do a quick highlight. I won't read through the next slide, but if you can just move on to the next slide for me, Pete, just to kind of highlight some of the outcomes and impacts of some of the previous researchers in residence awards. And I think these slides will be sent around to everybody. And I know we're probably going to hear a bit more about some of the things that have come out previously today. But I just wanted to give you that quick overview of sort of where researchers in residence sits within EPSRC's sort of impact portfolio, and just to hopefully reiterate that impact is really, really important to EPSRC. We've just been, yesterday I had attended a meeting of our key partners, so that's sort of all the kind of key university partners and key business partners, our strategic business partners, the sort of leads from each of those organizations, where we were talking about the delivery plan and all the different activities we were doing. And we had a session on innovation and impact, where all of those partners reiterated how important it was to them, and our council members who attended really also highlighted the importance of generating impact and accelerating impact for EPSRC as we move through this delivery plan period. So I'll stop there because I think I've probably gone over my time.
Thank you, Amanda. No, that's a great overview. And yes, the slides will be, we'll circulate the video of this event afterwards, because actually I think it's perhaps a little bit more important to hear what people have said about it as well. I can see in the chat that has been a question. If it's okay with you, Samit, we'll come back to that one later, because I think there are a number of things in the Q&A session where we can make sure everyone's clear about everything at the same time. But I don't think there's anything for you to worry about in that respect. So we'll now move on to a little bit more about the scheme itself and what it's there to do, what it will fund. Hopefully I'll answer some of the questions you might have in your head about the Researchers in Residence scheme. And essentially, as Amanda says, the scheme is there to promote academic engagement, and it's designed to enable researchers to work within the Catapult network alongside one or more of the Catapults, undertaking a project or activity in an area that's strategically important for the Catapult and for the UK. The fellowships should enable UK-based academics to spend approximately 6 months of their time working with one or more of those Catapults, spread flexibly over a period of 1 to 2 years. So at this stage, there are awards for £50,000. that should buy nominally 6 months of your time. And it's down to whatever arrangement you reach with Catapult or Catapults that you would like to work with as to exactly how you spread that time over that period. And historically, in the previous versions of the scheme, that could be a day a week. It could be in blocks of time, so it might be a week, a month, or it could be in much more intensive periods in gaps between other activities. I think what's key for this, though, is the ideas need to be co-developed and co-created. So it's really important for people who are interested in working with a particular catapult to talk to them about it and come up with a project that works for all of the parties. Because ultimately that's how the best projects and the best activities will come together. Obviously, we're looking to try and develop greater understanding in each of those areas. So the projects should be a development of previous research that you have been involved in, and they should hopefully align with the strategic areas of interest of the catapult that you want to work with. And collectively together, you should develop a greater understanding of the subject area. That should, as a natural part of it, help to increase knowledge exchange between the different individuals involved in both ways, actually. So both from the academic to the catapult and back again, in terms of a greater understanding about the challenge. And hopefully that should allow the researchers to gain a greater understanding of industry or the wider societal challenges in their areas across a greater range of sectors. And ultimately, it should help to develop the skills and talent in both UK universities and across the Catapult network. In terms of the mechanics, the plan is to have 4 tranches of project calls at roughly a cadence of 6 months. So we're launching the first of those today, and the next will follow. We've realised that 6 months from today lands us smack bang on top of Easter. So it might not be exactly 6 months. We're just working when the best place is to launch it. Will probably be just after Easter next year. In tranche 1, we're going to be awarding a voucher to a value of £50,000. As I've said, there is some scope in the funding to go larger than that. The ICT team have added some extra money into the pot, and they're actually open to much larger grants of teams of individuals working together with catapults. There are a few more mechanics of that we need to think about first, though, so we haven't launched that in this first tranche. It's likely that will be live in tranche number 2. Then later on, we'll also be launching an exploratory award scheme of 5k awards, really to help individuals and organisations that haven't worked with Catapult before to explore some of those potential collaborations. Because we recognise that for some of you, you won't actually have much experience of how the catapults work currently. So working out how to pitch that idea in that first window might be a little bit difficult. What we do want to do is to try and facilitate that. In terms of the basic requirements, applicants are expected to hold a PhD or equivalent experience and to be employed in either full or part-time at a UK university for the duration of the scheme. And as a minimum, the applicant should have a track record of research which aligns to the EPSRC's remit and the themic areas of the network. In previous schemes, it's very much focused on established academics. I think in first we broadened the scope of people that can apply. Ultimately, it comes down to any individual that applies to the scheme has to be in a role that would ordinarily be able to receive EPSRC funding. So we think that would only rule out current PhD students from applying, but equally a current PhD student is probably not going to be in a position yet where they will have developed a significant body of knowledge and understanding which is ready yet to translate into the Catapult network. So we don't think that is going to be a problem. It will be important, though, for applicants to demonstrate a strong awareness of the wider context of their research and how they're going to deliver impact through that research though. So when you're thinking about developing the proposals, really focus on how are you going to deliver impact from that research. It will also be important for applicants to get a letter of support, both from the Catapult that they are working with, but also from their host institution. And this is perhaps more important for the earlier career researchers who may not have the scope yet to determine their own activities going forward. And it's also, as mentioned a number of times, it's important that these projects are co-created. So it's really important that you discuss them with the catapults that you'd like to work with, to understand, well, how can they support within the time periods that you're proposing, and also do they have the right resources available, both in terms of equipment that you might want to access, but also in terms of the staff to support you and to help to develop that knowledge. Just in terms of the eligible costs, researchers can request up to 50K. This time around, it's 100% full economic cost, which should hopefully make it easier for people to buy out their own time. And there is also a budget there for travel and subsistence costs associated with your travel to the relevant catapults in support of the project. Other consumables and staff costs, so technician time, are not eligible within this award, and the cost should be gross direct costs without the addition of any overheads. Within this scheme, or within these awards, the scheme doesn't support the costs incurred by the research staff at the catapult itself. The catapults will have access to sources of funding from their own direction, well, from within the Catapult network to support that. So we really only want people to put in costing which include their own time, travel and subsistence. And then the catapults will have a similar scheme at their end to match any costs that they might have. So that's a headline of the scheme. It's probably quite important to give an overview of the Catapult network now, and their own areas of interest, and sort of the themes that they play in now. So we've now got a number of presentations from individuals from the Catapult network. I'm going to start off with the cell and gene therapy catapult. So we're going to be joined by David Sexton, who's going to give us an overview of their activities. So David, I can see you on screen. So I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Pete. And yeah, first thing I'll do is I'm going to introduce the cell and gene therapy catapult. Our catapult is quite specific. So our vision is to increase the number of cell and gene therapies getting to market and accelerate the industry. And we do that by collaborating with players in the space. We don't develop our own therapies. What we do is we partner with people developing therapies. So if you're an academic developing a cell gene therapy or tissue therapy, definitely be in touch, even outside the scheme, because we're experts in how you get that to market, or people making technologies and services to address that industry and help, accelerate the practicalities of how to manufacture it, how to test the quality control, the regulatory issues, and things of those nature. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Pete. So we have a large array of different core capabilities. So we have labs in Edinburgh and in Guy's Hospital in London, where we do process development and analytical development. We have regulatory and health economics experts in the London labs as well. And we have manufacturing facilities for manufacturing clinical grade material in Stevenage and in Braintree in Essex. In terms of what our core internal research and development areas and priorities are, I'd say the biggest ones are one, allogeneic cell therapies. So that's things like iPS cell therapeutics to differentiate into immuno cell types. So, NK cells, macrophages, T cells, things like that, and deliver what previously have been in things like CAR Ts in a universal donor format. So anything along those lines is high on our interests and agenda. on that lines, we're interested in cell engineering and optimizing the cells for therapeutic delivery. So people with synthetic biology backgrounds, people who can create gene circuits are also very much of interest to us, or who have novel ways of delivering payloads to the cells and gently modifying them. Another key area of interest is what we call gene delivery, which is viral vectors or maybe even non-viral systems to deliver gene therapies to patients. We have a lot of expertise in AAV manufacturing and in lentiviral manufacturing, and doing a lot of work looking at the biology of those cells and how to actually improve that in the manufacturing space. As an aside to both those areas, we have a high area of interest in process analytics, so things like Raman spectroscopy, where you can measure the process in real time and see what's going on in the manufacturing process. So that's a high area of interest in terms of the R&D side of things. We also have an environment shaping role in the supply chain. So we've heard from previous speakers about things like sustainability and net zero and circular economy. I'm looking at that at the moment. So I'm interested in talking to people who can help us quantify the CO2 footprint in the supply chain. And we've got projects in mind looking at recycling biomedical waste and the issues involved in that area of the supply chain. I've had collaborations in the past around novel ways of organizing the supply chain, so things like blockchain and that kind of system. So I hope that gives people a taste of what we do. And if you are involved in the cell and gene therapy industry and want making the therapeutics, get in touch with us anyway. So I look forward to speaking to you. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, David, and thank you for staying pretty much to time. So our next presentation is actually going to be from the Compound Semiconductor Application Catapult. Now, unfortunately, none of them could be with us to speak today, so they've recorded us a video. So I'm going to switch over from the presentation quickly to a separate video. Hopefully this is where I don't break the technology, so just bear with me quickly and I will do that. I'll switch to a tab. So hopefully that has brought up a video window. Could someone just confirm that that's the case?
Pete, I can see the video, and can I just make, if it's okay with you, a quick suggestion? A question's appeared specifically, I think, for David about scope of the cell and gene therapy catapult.
Okay, is that one just?
Can we ask David, please feel free, and other members of the catapult that are here, centres, to answer those specific questions in the chat, please?
Yeah,
thank you.
Is the video full screen?
Not quite for me, Pete.
Not quite full screen.
Yes,
let's make
it is now.
Right, I'll set it playing, and you're going to be hearing from John Robbins at the Compound Semiconductor Application Catapult.
Hello, my name is John Robbins. I'm Assistant Manager at CSA Catapult. Apologies for not being able to present this live and take questions, but our contact details are at the end of the presentation. CSK Catapult is the newest of all the catapults with an initial funding of £53 million in 2018. Since then, the catapult has employed over 100 people and built a state-of-the-art open access innovation centre that opened in 2019 in Newport, Wales. We have engineers with over 30 PhDs and over 705 years of relevant experience. To date, we've started work on over 25 collaborative R&D projects involving more than 100 partners, both from industry and academia, which are currently valued at £177 million. This rapid growth shows the market demands and adoption of compound semiconductors in the industry. We're also very proud to have become a DER industrialization centre as part of KI's Revolution Change. And in 2020, we became one of, if not the first catapult to become registered as a KTP knowledge base, and can now work with universities as a shared knowledge base or direct with industrial partners. Our key markets are automotive, clean energy, digital communications, defence and security, and many, many more. Our Innovation Centre, located at the heart of the Compound Semiconductor Cluster in South Wales, is home to a design studio, laboratories and test facilities. Our engineering capabilities focus on modelling, characterisation, integration and validation, and we call this as MCIV. This enables us to engage with companies and universities in a variety of projects at different TRL levels, from device packaging, engineering design, support consultation, firm. Internally, our engineering teams are split into 4 main technology areas that closely align to key applications for compound semiconductors. These are power electronics, which includes power device characterization, environmental and lifetime test and failure analysis, alongside modeling, simulation and complete system test. RF and microwave focuses on RF power and noise amplifiers, including device characterization with on-wafer measurements possible. Photonics focuses around PIC test and assembly, reliability and lifetime testing. We also have an advanced packaging lab in a class 10,000 clean room, where we can do device and component assembly from die attach and wire bonding, submicron assembly and inspection capability, including X-ray CT. We have some capabilities unique to the UK, such as hybridization, and coming early in 2023, ceramic and 3D metal printing. The key areas of focus for us as an organisation and for research in residence align to our strategic company focus on applications for clean energy, electrification of transport, digital communications, and intelligent sensing. Specifically, the engineering focuses that we'd like to engage with you include next generation power solutions from grid to automotive drivetrains, for our photonics team that has strong expertise in quantum applications, supporting UK and technology readiness across the 5G supply chain. As a Catapult, our job is to enable design activity across both academia and industry as a neutral supply chain convener that enables multiple end markets and encourages fertilisation of ideas. We are keen to engage with you as part of the Researcher in Residence programme or in any form of commercial or collaborative project. So please do reach out to either myself, and as I said at the very start of the presentation, the contact details for Alex, our Skills Academy manager, is on this slide. Thank you.
Right, so thank you and apologies at the beginning for the echo. Now let's see if I can get the technology to switch back again to the presentation. So hopefully that's now back up on screen. So I'd now like to introduce you to Wolfgang Schuster from the Connected Places Catapult, who's going to be talking to you about their activities.
Thank you, and good afternoon all. I'm Executive Director for Ecosystem Innovation, the rebranded CTO position at the Connected Places Catapult. And I just want to start with a brief overview of the Connected Place Catapult, including our markets and innovation areas of focus and our capabilities, and then give you a very brief overview of our current areas of interest for the Researchers in Residence program, then end on a brief case study. So the Connected Place Catapult is the UK's innovation accelerator for cities, transport and place leadership, and our focus is on providing impartial innovation as a service for public bodies, businesses and infrastructure providers to really catalyze step change improvements in the way people live, work and travel. So we connect businesses and public sector leaders to cutting edge research to spark innovation and grow new markets. We run technology demonstrators and SME accelerators to scale new solutions that drive growth, spread prosperity and eliminate carbon. Our strategy centers around 6 ecosystem verticals. We have 3 ecosystems that we refer to as the so-called intense places that include maritime and ports, air mobility and airports, and rail and stations. And these are places that are likely to be strongly innovation friendly and places that often sit at the intersection of multiple systems and services and that lend themselves to scale and replicate. Of course, operations in our intense places are underpinned by the robustness and resilience of an integrated infrastructure ecosystem that can have a profound influence on innovation activity. And in that ecosystem vertical, we include things like road, utility sector, and communication sector, as well as digital infrastructure. And it's in essence what connects the other ecosystems together. So it fulfills an enabler function. Innovation in all of these ecosystems is also crucially dependent on plans and policies that are set by local, regional, and national government, which is encapsulated in our place leadership ecosystem vertical, which is in essence also an ecosystem of ecosystems that really enables integration across these ecosystems. And then we have homes and housing that aligns to the key challenge areas identified in the UK's innovation strategy, including around healthy aging and housing retrofits. And across these 6 ecosystem verticals, we are focused on 3 key innovation challenges. People's experience, firstly. Places prosper when they understand and design for the needs of people. And in the Connected Place Catapult, we have access to a range of capabilities which help partners to understand the changing needs and to design for experience. Secondly, we're focused on connected intelligence, where we're focused on the infrastructure that enables digital connectivity within and between places, as well as the technology and intelligence that enables data-rich insights, modeling, and analysis. And then thirdly, climate action. We convene the markets to spark disruptive innovation and scale up net zero and resilience technologies by, amongst others, developing the business and operational case for adoption and deployment. Let me just give you a very brief overview of our core delivery capabilities. Next slide, please. So we have 5 core delivery directorates, including modeling and appraisal, where we're focused on business case and impact assessment, business modeling and market appraisal, sustainability and GIS, wider modeling. In applied data technologies, our focus is on data science, digital twins, software development, urban technology. In built environment, we cover city standards, digitizing planning and housing. Human connected design includes design futures, human insights and service design. And new mobility technologies covers aviation and wider transport, mobility integration, mobility technology innovation, and also regulations, safety, validation, and verification. Moving on to our core areas of interest. So to set the scene, each of these areas of interest, the projects that we have identified, support existing work programs within the Catapult that we're very keen to engage with academia. And the first of these proposed areas of interest is around net zero train stations, which should generate an understanding of how improvements at stations can support the net zero and air quality agendas. The projects would really be focused on understanding the current state, the challenges, and then develop a roadmap of priorities. And outputs could include things like an understanding of carbon emissions from stations and journeys to and from stations, including station construction, modification, an understanding of air quality improvements needed and where innovation is possible, and recommendations for station net zero improvements. Our second topic area centers around the circular principles in the built environment, covering wasted building materials and inefficiencies of construction in terms of embodied carbon. Outputs could include an overview of current practices and definitions and a view on what these best practices and best definitions are. How circularity varies by construction type and ecosystem, and therefore the potential opportunities for improvements by cross-fertilizing learnings from one context to another, and the identification of areas where there are opportunities for more circular practices through innovation. The third topic area we've identified is safety for women and girls in public transport. Women and girls are statistically much more likely to feel uncomfortable and unsafe when traveling. And transport safety for women and girls aims to find ways to understand and alleviate those feelings. And outputs could include deeper understanding of the technology solutions that could have an impact on transport safety. Further output could be the mapping of the different types of people that use transport and the reasons why they do, and an understanding of where there are opportunities for innovation more generally. Our fourth topic area is focused on the transport network. At a system level, the transport network is clearly suboptimal in terms of resilience due to the lack of integration between modes. And as such, this topic is really focused on opportunities to improve resilience in the transport networks through multimodal development. And outputs from this project could include a set of recommendations, including potential interventions and thought leadership pieces around the market barriers and opportunities for multimodal transport within the overall transport system. And then finally, the last topic really is focused on secure, robust, and affordable future infrastructure networks that are resilient to climate change impacts. Infrastructure networks require new and scalable means to capture data on asset failure across a wide range of weather and climate scenarios, and gain a robust understanding of connected cross-sector cascading failures to improve resilience. An output could include a playbook, user manual that describes how to undertake expert elicitation methods for asset failures, or a questionnaire that can be used to elicit failure probabilities, a mechanism to collect failure probabilities for a network of assets in a digital means that could also then be compatible and interoperable, and able to share data with other entities. So that's just a brief overview of our core areas of interest, and obviously we'd welcome your thoughts on those, and if you have any interest in any of those, please do reach out to us on the email address that's provided on this slide. I just want to briefly end on a case study of a past researcher in residence program, and this was focused on artificial intelligence for urban traffic management and control. And the challenge, addressing the cost of congestion, the solution, a context-driven, personalized routing for journeys, ensuring the smooth flowing traffic and reduced delays and reduced investments required to increase capacity. And the success of the researchers in residence program is really encapsulated amongst others in Professor Maurer's award of a UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship to build on the research that was performed during the program. This is obviously about one of the success stories and really provides a good example of the value that this program can generate for its participants. So I appreciate it was a quick tour, and obviously if you're interested in more details on any of these topics, please do reach out to us on the email address that was provided on the previous slide. Thank you, and I will now hand back to Pete.
Thank you, Wolfgang. So we'll make sure, obviously, that everybody gets all of these email addresses and contact details after the event. Our next presentation is from Jacinth at the Digital Catapult, who I can see has just appeared on the screen, and she's going to give you an overview of the Digital Catapult's area of interest and expertise.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Pete. If you could just move on to the next slide. So I'm Jacinta. I work at Digital Catapult. My role is partly policy research and academic engagement. So I take care of our relationship with academic institutions. So who we are the UK authority. I think one slide back, if you can. Okay, so next slide. Sorry. We are the UK authority on advanced digital technology. Previous slide, please. And we work along 4 or 5 technology verticals, which are AI and machine learning, immersive technology, so VR, AR, and haptics, future networks, so IoT and 5G, blockchain, DLT, and a new area recently, which makes the 5th area, it's quantum technologies. So our goal is to see industry adoption, I think just like any other Catapult, industry adoption of these technology areas from startups and SMEs in order to drive growth and economic growth in the UK. Next slide, please. We do our three main activities are to convene industry groups and research organizations and academics groups also. We host infrastructure to advance each R&D area, and we coordinate activity between companies, small businesses, and bigger players. And we host teams of technology experts, which makes up our expertise, which makes us able to take commercial projects as well, which is another stream of income for us. Next slide, please. So, like I explained, we are pretty horizontal, contrary to the other catapults, and industry agnostic. We work in the following areas or industries: manufacturing, construction, logistics, and the creative and cultural spaces. So typically we do not work in the health and medical tech spaces because other catapults do it better than us. Yeah, so if you are interested in our work, please reach out. Here is my email. And on the next slide, there is a short case study of researcher from the Researchers in Residence program that was embedded in a digital catapult. And he represented the University of Sheffield Hallam, and he developed through the use of blockchain, VR and AR, he developed a protocol to influence a JPEG standard. So I'm sure you can read that in your own time. I'm not going to explain everything. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Hopefully I'll turn my mic off mute now. So next up, we've got Liam Lidston from the Energy Systems Catapult. Over to you, Liam.
Thanks, Pete. Could you just move on to the next slide to start with? Just to sort of give you a brief overview of the Energy Systems Catapult. As with the other catapults, obviously focus on innovation and do a lot of partnership collaboration. Our particular area where we're applying this is around clean growth in relation to the energy system. And that's particularly in 2 specific areas around supporting innovators to commercialize in the areas in the lighter green at the top on the right-hand side. So around testing and demonstration, understanding consumers, behavioral science applications of that, delivering trials, harnessing digital data, etc., and business model innovation. And then the other area is around looking at the future energy system and what kind of innovation is needed to help realize that. So there's a lot of work done specifically around whole system modeling, so whole energy system modeling from production through to end use and everything in between. Application of systems theory, systems engineering to various problems that sort of might be encountered in any sort of transition to sort of help deliver net zero. Big focus on clean technology engineering as part of that, as you can imagine, looking at particular areas of decarbonisation related to places or sites or sectors, campuses, business parks, industrial estates. And also we look at market policies and regulation, the implications of that. And the theme around transport and energy systems and how they integrate given the expected changing nature around those sorts of areas. If you move on to the next slide, Pete. Excuse me. In terms of the tools, labs, facilities, we have access to, so can potentially be used with within any collaborative research. We have our Energy Launchpad area, which is fundamentally around supporting innovators through different stages. We have our Living Lab, which is a collection of well over 1,000 homes, which are fully instrumented with real people living in them, where different types of kit service models are tested and sort of seen how people use them as they or engage with them as they live in their homes, etc. What kind of impacts, what kind of business returns are possible from the application of those technologies and services. We also have a home truths consumer panel, which is a way of kind of rapidly gaining access and insight from a collection of consumers we have on tap, as it were, to where we have a lot of detail about their sort of socioeconomic status, their personalities, etc. So you can look at sort of the attitude, for example, of different types of consumers to different types of interventions, technologies, services, etc. And we have a large body of or collection of different types of data where we can, for example, the data from the Living Lab, we gather roughly terabytes of data from per home for a single trial, and we have from several to hundreds or even thousands of homes within a given trial. We also have a data platform, other trial data, specific data around sites, place, and of course electricity, gas consumption. And the last two areas, or two sets of tools and labs we have are specifically around modelling and analysis. The first collection at the national level, which is underpinned primarily by our energy system modelling environment, and some of the sister tools which look at different areas around, for example, flexibility, transport, energy networks, road freight, industry, and industry decarbonisation and bioenergy. Excuse me. And then we have a various place-based toolkits, etc., looking at local area energy planning, dynamic system simulation from technologies, applications, etc., data asset representation at local levels, dynamic modelling for domestic properties, zero carbon vote, which is another way of surveying consumer attitudes, etc., on a rapid basis. And then last slide, Pete. Next slide, brother. Yeah. So in terms of the one before that, the activities that we have are heavily focused around the net zero theme, and this includes things from in terms of around consumer behaviour, carbon accounting, anything to do with policy and regulation development, particularly with a focus on minimising costs, greenhouse gas emissions, or improving social equity. Improved methodologies for enabling data exchange between different forms of models. Obviously, digital twins is becoming a popular terminology at the moment, but virtual environment modeling or other terminologies around that are also of interest. Novel applications of data analytics and machine learning. As I said, we gather very large amounts of data, terabytes of data per home. We have quite a few homes that we have within our trials and our labs. So novel ways of processing that. Anything around development potential for novel energy technologies in various areas. Looking at particular applications for subsurface mapping of energy infrastructure, seen as potentially really useful. Looking at the supply chain requirements for large scale transformations in different parts of the energy system. Modelling analysis of bioenergy value chains or associated impacts around land use. Anything to do with geospatial analysis methodologies for energy system changes. Improved methodologies for energy infrastructure modelling. Looking at multi-vector integration, so different types of energy supply working together. Applications of agent-based modelling, particularly around transport demand or energy storage flexibility, but other energy-related applications also of interest. Looking at combinatorial optimization approaches for some of the complex systems modelings we have. So looking at ways of accelerating the narrowing down the solution space of those models. Looking at dynamic modelling for domestic and commercial heating. Ways of looking at large-scale rapid acquisition of data for surveying assets, for example, where obviously there's existing ways of doing this for, say, where you might mount solar panels on roofs, etc., but things around sort of building efficiency, identifying that from in a more rapid way than is currently possible. Looking at application of approaches such as game theory to sort of impacts of policy, regulatory design, market outcomes. Other business model innovation, looking at future heating and cooling demands in relation to expected changes in environment and climate. And then on the health and well-being side, very interested in energy products and services to deliver health and well-being, and also looking at the social equity implications. So how do we help the most vulnerable in the transition to net zero, protect them from the sort of the negative consequences? On a resilience perspective, looking at the future of the operability of the future energy system. So how to ensure it functions under a different architecture than it currently has, and looking at the resilience of the energy system to future and weather and climate scenarios. Thank you, Pete. And contact details are on the last slide, which I'm going to share.
So thank you, Liam. I'll just leave that slide pausing there momentarily in case anyone is trying to jot down your contact details. And then we'll move on to the next catapult. Oh, I need to advance the slides. So the next catapult up is High Value Manufacturing Catapult. And I'll hand over to Mike Hinton, who's going to run you through the HM Catapult's activities.
Right, so good afternoon, everybody. I recognise I'm talking to a whole community of internet savvy folks, so I'm not going to try and blast you with a load of facts and a load of lists of things we're interested in, but just a couple of numbers just to get you going. So first of all, manufacturing in the UK, it represents about 10% of our economy directly. Depending on how you do your maths, it probably represents overall maybe up to 25% of our economy when you take into account the indirect support functions. So it's big. The other big number is of the total energy emissions we consume in the UK, emissions, 43% of them come from how we manufacture things and what we make them out of. So if we're going to do a net zero transformation in the country, there's going to be quite a big focus in this area. Okay, so we're about trying to make sure the UK actually builds up its industrial base and is world leading in manufacturing and the engineering processes that go with it. Next slide, please, Pete. We have the advantage in that we're the first catapult in what's a relatively well-established set of the ecosystem in the UK. So we're pretty big. We've got 3,500 people. We're scattered on quite a number of sites, and we've got industrial scale equipment. That's the critical thing. We've got somewhere in excess of £800 million worth of assets. We work across all of the sectors, aero, auto, defence, chemicals, etc. So, you know, for example, in the auto sector, we're in the middle of how do we upscale and build the gigafactories for power supplies of electric vehicles? How do we, working with the other catapults and others, develop an electric motor and power electronics supply base so that we can serve the auto industry? And I won't go any further because we've got really good websites and you can find all this out for yourself. But you can see that we're quite a large organisation covering a lot of ground. Next slide, please, Pete. Yeah, and again, we could cut by markets, we could cut by technologies. This is no more than a hint at the sorts of things that we do. So at one extreme, how do we make sure that we can provide assurance in all of our areas? If you're building a nuclear reactor and you want to do it in a different way, you probably need to make sure it's not going to fall apart. So assurance is a big deal for us. Almost to the other extremes, we're in the midst of a variety of things in biomanufacturing. And again, I'm not going to go through a list here. You can mine this for yourselves through our websites. Next slide, Pete. Right, so we've been, as Pete indicated, we've been sort of at the forefront with our Catapult colleagues at pushing forward the research in residence and its predecessor scheme. So we've hosted already something over 40 R&Rs and their equivalents. And really the headline message is we're open to any good ideas. We're more interested in, rather than saying we do this, this and this, come and see if there's a fit, which is have a look at our websites, pick up the phone, talk to us, and we're really keen to try and get hold of the ideas that you have and you've been developing within the academic base, and try and make sure we can pull that through with you to reduce the risk, start to talk to industry where appropriate, and basically do the steps necessary to try to accelerate that idea into some value. So there is no cap, frankly, on the boundaries of what we'd be interested in having a conversation with. I've put a few things on this list, but they're by no means the cap. They're just some things to give you an indication of the sorts of things we're doing across all three of the key areas here of net zero, healthy society, and resilience. And again, you can read this at your leisure. And then I would really like you to get in touch and start to develop the ideas with my colleagues out in the 7 centres that comprise HVMC. And the last slide, if you could, Pete. So there's a use case here. It's not specifically written around a particular R&R, although I could have done that. But it gives you a bit of a flavour of the sorts of things that we do across the thousands of companies we work with. Now, here's an example where putting in smart robotics into an organisation then means they can make very, very substantial changes in how they manufacture and therefore make a more profitable business out of it. But the thing to think about here is, what's the science that underpins this? There's a whole bunch of stuff around control, sensing, digital twins, digitalization of the information, and indeed how you would then perhaps replicate this and scale this up on a more sensible scale across a whole bunch of factories. So, sitting underneath there are a myriad of science challenges. So I'm going to stop at that point. Pick up the phone and talk to us is the message, and then let's see where we go. And we have the great advantage of a large organisation with a large capacity to try to attract and build and strengthen our academic links. Back to you, Pete.
Thank you, Mike. That's great summary of the HVM activities there. We're now moving on to the Medicines Discovery Catapult, and Beverly Isherwood is going to talk on their behalf. Over to you, Beverly.
Thanks, Pete. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to talk to you a little bit about the Medicines Discovery Catapult. So if you could head to our first slide, please, Pete. We're one of the newest catapults. We were established in 2015. Our purpose and vision is around reshaping drug discovery for patient benefit. We are based in Alderley Park in Cheshire, which is also the UK's largest single-site life sciences campus. We're, as all catapults, an independent not-for-profit organisation. Our team is currently sized at around about 130 specialists with lots of diverse medicines discovery experience. And to date, what we've been able to do is to partner with over 100 organisations. We've supported over 130 companies. 4 compounds have progressed into the clinic, and the companies that we've worked with have secured 0.2 billion in investment funding. The only way we've been able to support and help these companies is by working with the much broader research community, especially the academic community, to really help overcome challenges, barriers in drug discovery. And so this is really what we're about, is supporting innovators by leveraging that UK infrastructure expertise to tackle these industry challenges and then drive the adoption of those new tools. So everything is about partnership. So to give you a bit of a flavour of our current areas of focus, capabilities and activities, on the next slide, you can just see here a very high level view. So these current areas of capabilities have been identified through cross-sector programmes that have uncovered the unmet needs for different areas. In terms of our capabilities, they span these areas. So translational models, really looking to try and improve the predictivity of models that can predict whether compounds are going to work in the late clinical phases and ultimately in patients. Also, biomarkers and personalised medicine. We've invested heavily in multi-omic approaches, and we're applying that in the preclinical space, but increasingly in early clinical development to really help accelerate how trials are done and to improve their success rates as well. We've invested significantly in macro to micro scale imaging and microscopy technologies, and we use that for looking at target engagement and drug distribution, so really trying to understand what new medicines, where they're going, what target they're interacting to give us that best chance of translation. We have a significant focus around what we term complex medicines. So these are medicines which are non-traditional small molecules. They typically don't have a very straightforward regulatory path because they're completely unprecedented, and we're conducting a lot of work in that area at the moment to help companies in that space. And then lastly, in spanning the whole the whole space from discovery through to clinical is around data-driven, AI-enabled medicines discovery. And then in terms of our virtual, non-lab-based focus, we have a virtual scientist function. And here, this provides input and advice around translational roadmaps for companies, but also broader drug discovery advisory support, right from early phase to late clinical. So yeah, would be very pleased to hear from anyone who has additional thoughts about how we can improve the success of compounds in these areas or in new ones. In terms of areas of focus, on the next slide, I can give you a bit of a feel for where we're currently thinking. So we do work across all areas of drug discovery, but specific areas, I guess this largely aligns with healthcare and well-being. In terms of disease areas, we're currently focused on 3 main areas: infection and immunity, neuroscience and oncology. But of course, we're interested in hearing about things outside of that as well. And in terms of platforms, I've mentioned some of this already, but anything that can really help companies progress their complex medicines, really thinking about precision medicine from preclinical into clinical development, and informatic AI-enabled drug discovery. They're 3 core areas of interest for us at the moment. My contact details are at the bottom of this slide, and I know they'll be circulated afterwards. So please do get in touch with ideas that you have. We'd be very happy to talk about them. It's always great to hear about the next thing. And in terms of one last slide, just to try and make this a bit real, I can give you an example here of some work that we've done. We have a large program which we partner with the Cystic Fibrosis Trust and Life Arc on, called the CF-AMR Syndicate. And this was about bringing together the community to understand the barriers to progressing antimicrobials in this patient population who have a huge need. In doing that, we identified a number of barriers and blockers, and then we worked across academic centres across the UK to build research projects to overcome these barriers. So to give you an example, some of this is around defining that translational roadmap, target product profiles. It could be things like looking at healthcare economics as well. It's things like making sure people have got access to samples, data, expertise to help them to progress their compounds. And it's also accessing equipment that's available at the Catapult to help develop whole new suites of preclinical models and validate them as well. So that's just a very high level flavour of some of the things that we do. Hopefully that's been helpful, and yeah, looking forward to continuing the conversation. Thank
you, Beverly. Nearly on our last catapult now. Next up is the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult, and Paul McKeever is presenting on their behalf.
Okay, thanks, Pete.
Yeah,
you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, okay. So, afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul McKeever. I'm Head of Electrical Research at ORE Catapult. So, if you just flick on a slide, please, Pete. So, firstly, an overview of ORE Catapult. So, we're one of the sector-specific catapults within the family. So, obviously, our focus is offshore renewable energy. So as it says in the top left there, our mission is to accelerate creation and growth of UK companies in offshore renewable energy. And essentially we're the UK's leading research centre that's focused on offshore renewable energy. Top right, it's a little bit small, but essentially that's where we're located around the UK. Our main centres are in Blyth in North East England and also in Glasgow, but we have several other sites as well. And then in terms of our role, well, one of our roles is to work across the supply chain in offshore renewable energy. So at the base, the foundation, we're working with academia and the general research base, and that's very much underpinned by schemes like researcher in residence. And then we're working right up through SMEs and supply chain, right the way through to the owner operators and the turbine OEMs in offshore wind. And essentially we're trying to drive the economic growth in the UK, and we do that in various areas such as those listed there. So there's thought leadership, industry leadership, supporting companies in particular SMEs, and also identifying those innovation priorities. So if you click on a slide. So in terms of our capabilities and activities, this slide here illustrates of the 4 directorates, or the main 4 directorates within the company. So we have technology development, which is very much our test facilities, where we focus on accelerating next generation turbine technology, balance of plant like cables and electrical infrastructure. We also have our development operations directorate, which focuses on the close relationship with wind farm developers and turbine OEMs. And we have our strategy and emerging technology directorate, which is looking at, I guess, the more disruptive innovation that's coming into our sector, some links with academia as well. And just an example there, floating wind is one of the areas that is up and coming. Also, future energy systems is another one that isn't actually mentioned on that slide. And then the overarching directorate we have is research and technical capabilities. So that's the directorate that the research and residence applicants are most likely to be dealing with, and that directorate's function is to support the other 3, and obviously, as it says there, lead the development and delivery of the applied research. Okay, next slide. So this slide here shows that we've got sub-themes in both net zero and resilience. As you might expect, there isn't a huge amount of activity in health and well-being because we're very much focused on offshore renewable energy. What I've tried to do here on the left-hand side is give you maybe a few priority areas that come under some of those sub-themes of net zero and resilience. So we've got robotics, data and digital technologies. So we're interested in things like prognostic condition monitoring, machine learning, AI, and also solutions for the removal of human intervention, because obviously offshore wind turbines, they're not always very easily accessible. So we want to minimize that human intervention. In terms of offshore and onshore grid transformation, you may be aware that there's a big push with offshore renewables. We want 40 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2050, 100 gigawatts by 2050. So the challenges around that are of interest to us, and related to that, we have energy storage technologies, multiple energy vectors. So we're starting to look more and more about hydrogen solutions. Also, the optimization of offshore wind to hydrogen, so that green hydrogen interface is important to us. And then also the role of turbines and wind farms in the future. So for example, their ability to provide ancillary services to the wider grid network is of great interest. Then, of course, next generation turbines. So you probably noticed that turbines are getting bigger and bigger. We're currently pushing towards 20 megawatt turbines, which are similar to the size of the Eiffel Tower. So they're pretty big structures. So development of components and materials and monitoring and validation technology. And then finally, floating offshore wind, which I mentioned before. We're particularly interested in developments around dynamic cables and DC cable technology. So as it says there, if you want to discuss any of these ideas, and as other catapults have said, it's really important to chat this through before we submit applications, then we've got Di Lewis's email address there, who can help point you in the right direction. So next slide, please, Pete. So I think this is the last slide. So this is a quick case study. So one of the areas that we look at are wind turbine blades. This case study concerns torsional testing. So essentially what we're trying to do with our blade test facilities is test the blades in a more efficient and more realistic way. And torsional testing is one approach to achieving that. So as it says on the slide there, we've done some modeling of that methodology, and we've also got a blade in one of our facilities now, a 50-meter blade facility. So what we've done there is heavily instrumented that blade, and we're using the data from that to improve and inform the torsional model. That involved a research associate from the University of Bristol. So it's just one example of us working with academia on a really interesting and relevant subject. Okay, and I think that's me, Pete.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That actually does bring us on to the last of our catapults today. So we're joined for this session by Eddie Ross from the Satellite Applications Catapult. Over to you, Eddie.
Thanks, Pete. Can you hear and see us okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, fantastic, thanks. So yeah, thanks for inviting the Satellite Applications Catapult to talk at this Innovation Launchpad event as well. If you could just move on to the next slide, please, Pete. Who are we as the Satellite Applications Catapult? So we have a vision statement to empower for a better world. To innovate for a better world empowered by space, and we do that through energizing the market, empowering technology, and enabling business. And as you can see on the screen, we have three main focus areas of technical capability. So on the right-hand side, they're listed as the top one, ubiquitous connectivity. So this focuses on satellite connectivity, how that can integrate with terrestrial connectivity, with satellites acting as a backhaul, and how new UK position navigation and timing services can be online. There's geospatial intelligence. So this focuses on Earth observation data for making informed decision making, and also thinks about how to link together remote sensing from the ground with space data. And then access to space is quite a broad remit there, which is looking at barriers to growth of the UK space launch, manufacturing of satellites and space components, and catalyzing an in-orbit economy. So that's servicing and manufacturing in space, as well as looking to go beyond Earth in things like in situ resource utilization. We apply those areas of technology over a number of market areas, and they're kind of, some of them are listed there on the bottom on the application. So through things like transport, agriculture, through to health. We are in the future looking to develop four main mission areas that are currently being called Autonomous Earth, Connected Earth, Beyond Earth, and Sustainable Earth, and hopefully they kind of make sense based on the terminology that's used there and what you can see on the screen right now. So if you move on to the next slide, please, Pete. So I've not provided any case studies, but there is a Working with Academia page on our website. And on there you can see the researchers in residence page, and there's a number of key case studies of the researchers in residence that occurred during the last phase. But what's just important to note there is that each of the researchers in residence that we've had so far have really enabled those academics to develop their career and create new links. Each of them that we've had have forged some great impact stories through new mechanisms of funding being unlocked, new partnerships being unlocked. So we really feel like this program delivers a lot of benefit to the researchers, and it really allows the Catapult to kind of bring in new expertise to help upskill our staff and develop furthering relationships with the research base. So if you could just move on to the next slide, Pete. I think what I've moved on to now is just really to focus down on each of those three themes, to just kind of share a little bit more insight about what the Satellite Applications Catapult is interested in, some of the activities that we've got so far. So on the net zero theme, we have a space energy initiative, so looking at solar power from space, so space-based solar power. On sustainable finance and asset level data, so how we can make use of spatial finance into decision making, so Earth observation tied with assets such as the kind of mind, like plants that create metals and bricks and the like. Net Zero Space Coalition, so this is looking at new guidance for net zero through space technology. Natural capital, so how can we bring in Earth observation and AI capabilities for scale carbon sequestration. We've got an agri-living lab, and that ties in actually with an environmental living lab that we're bringing to bear in the next year or so. So that looks to develop together connectivity, Earth observation, position navigation and timing to try and help develop new and test new agri-tech solutions. And then on the zero deforestation commodity supply chain, so how can we use these solutions to create a resilient food supply chain? So that's on the net zero theme. If you could go to the next slide, Pete. So on healthcare and wellbeing, this is one where we have kind of slightly fewer links, but there's kind of three main areas here. So I mentioned the Agri and Environment Living Lab. So we also have this Healthy Living Lab, which looks to do something analogous to the Agri one, but for testing solutions to address social wellbeing challenges in healthcare in the UK. So that includes satellite connectivity, but also it can include Earth observation through things like air quality monitoring. And this AI Institute for Planet Earth, so that's looking really that kind of big, broad One Health challenges and how the combination of geospatial data and artificial intelligence can try to solve some real world challenges. And then on microgravity, so how can we utilize that in space environment to produce new materials, say potentially new drugs, etc., in that microgravity environment that could be beneficial to the healthcare sector. And then finally, on the next slide, Pete, we then have the resilience theme. So this one where really we've got some of the main overlaps. I won't go into too much detail on each of those bullet points, but there's a lot around connectivity here. So looking at how satellite and terrestrial satellite can provide backhaul for terrestrial communications, things like advancing from 5G through to 6G, some really novel new areas of communication. So how can we use synthetic aperture communications? How can we create digital twins? So integrating Earth observation data into virtual environment simulations of the Earth. There's in-orbit servicing and manufacturing again. So how can we do that, but also make that resilient? And in-orbit servicing, how can we clear up some debris to make sure that we've got a resilient space environment? On space clusters, which is another interesting area. So, we're not completely just focused down on the engineering and science side. So how can we work actually with the socioeconomic researchers to deliver against the levelling up agenda and a resilient post-COVID space economy? And then how can we manage environmental risks as well through, for instance, like mining? So that's everything on those themes. I'll echo some of the comments from some of the other catapults in that we're interested in exploring these ideas further, but also interested in hearing the ideas that the research base has. So do please get in touch with us through the portal, that website that will be coming online hopefully in the next week or so, that Pete, I'm sure, will send out more information about. So if you just go to the next slide, Pete, I think there's the last one, which just has the email address. So we have a knowledge exchange email address. So you can contact us there to find out some more information about the Satellite Applications Catapult, or utilise that website that Pete will hopefully send around soon, or go onto our Working with Academia web pages on our Satellite Applications Catapult. So thanks a lot, Pete. Back to you.
Thank you, Eddie. So I'm now going to hand you over to one of our co-investigators. So Professor Ashutosh Tiwari was one of the original batch of what was known at the time as Catapult Fellows. So that was the first round of the scheme. And Ash is just going to talk you through some of his experiences of living as one of this type of, living one of these types of fellowships. And ultimately also as well, what it helped him to do as part of his career. So over to you, Ash.
Yeah. Thank you, Pete. Pete, can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah, brilliant. It's my pleasure really to talk to you from two perspectives. One is, as Pete mentioned, I was one of the awardees of Research and Residence Award in the past, and now I'm part of the investigator team and the management team of the Innovation Launchpad. So it's a real pleasure to talk to you. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Ash Tiwari. I am Chairperson Royal Academy of Engineering, Research and Digital Manufacturing at the University of Sheffield. I'm also the Director of Research and Innovation here for the Faculty of Engineering. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the benefits of being a research in residence and how it has actually worked for me, both in terms of research and in terms of my own career progression. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the next two slides, I'm going to give you a very brief introduction of the work that was carried out as part of the EPSRC HVM Catapult Fellowship, as it was called then. So research and residence, it was at that time referred to as EPSRC High Value Manufacturing Catapult Fellowship. I carried that out with the Manufacturing Technology Center. It's a part of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult Centers from 2015 to 2018. And the work had a very simple but clear objective. The idea was to develop a virtual robotic cell that can allow us to measure human interactions to robot actions at close proximities. So testing in such environments is difficult in real life and sometimes even impossible. So what we wanted to do is to have a virtual robotic cell where some of this testing can happen, and we can see how people react to robots working in close proximities and working together with robots. Now, as part of this, interaction with the MTC was a key element, and we started with a part of the facility of the MTC. We took measurements, we took photographs of the MTC, of part of the MTC layout. We modeled that in an environment called Autodesk Maya. We transferred that into a Unity 3D environment, another platform that allows us to also incorporate robots into the cell. And that led to the creation of our virtual robot cell, which was a replication of the true environment or real environment that MTC had. Pete, next slide, please. Okay. Once that was done, experimentation was a key element, both with the researchers, the engineers at the MTC, but also with colleagues from the industrial partners who we were interacting with. And as part of this, we developed a set of demonstrators, starting with lab-based demonstrators first at the university, and then taking them further and scaling it up to MTC-based demonstrators. That allowed us to test with a variety of engineers and managers. Human reactions to robotic actions could be measured using a range of matrices. And at the end, what we got was a range of results that could allow us to test safe human-robot collaboration strategies in different industrial scenarios. And going even further, we could come up with strategies that allow us to customize robot behavior when working closely with a human, so that it's better fit to the reactions that we are getting from the human. So we can customize robot kinematics. That's a brief introduction of the project. At the bottom, you see a screenshot of the tool that was tested in MTC and top level of the experimental design. Pete, next slide, please. Okay, now this slide is talking about the benefits that I, as a researcher, had from this scheme, and it gives us the collaboration in numbers and the scale of the collaboration. The first point is important because that was the one that was directly funded through this scheme. So 6 months of my time was funded over the fellowship period, and it was flexible time in consultation with the MTC. So it was distributed over the fellowship duration to suit my other responsibilities, and that really worked for me. In addition to this, we developed one MTC-based demonstrator and 2 lab-based demonstrators around the areas that I mentioned in the previous slide. Now, in parallel with this, MTC committed internal resources that allowed collaboration with me and my research team. That was very important as well, because I think it allowed us to collaborate and develop research results to scale. And that was a key element of the scheme, and still is a key element of what we are proposing here. Now, there were some follow-on benefits. It was not only me interacting with the Catapult Center. We had a number of MSc projects, group projects that were done as part of this activity. In total, 13 staff and students collaborated. A number of follow-on research proposals came on in collaboration with our industrial partners. 3 proposals actually came on with Innovate, UK, EU, and EPSRC. We had joint publications as well that were developed, and in total, 21 people got involved in that fellowship period with me. 8 engineers and managers at the MTC and 13 staff and students at the university. So a number of people benefited from that interaction. Pete, next slide, please. Okay, this is an important slide that talks about the benefit to my skill set and my research area. And I'll take through the first point in a little bit more detail in the next slide. But let me explain to you how I felt was the main benefit of the scheme. I think for me, the biggest benefit was that it gave me exposure to the phased development of research ideas. How the research ideas could be evaluated in translational terms, and how the TRL scale-up could actually be implemented. The opportunities there, the barriers there. I think it was a great experience in terms of learning and talking with the engineers in the Catapult Center. There was also training in translational research in the sense that we learned a lot, or I learned a lot, not only myself, but also the research group, in terms of what are the opportunities that translational research offers us, and what are the new research areas, research themes that need to be dealt with when you scale up from your lab to an industrial scale facility in the Catapult site. And a key element of this was the development of demonstrators. We developed some at the university and some at the MTC that allowed us to interact with not only engineers at the MTC, but also potential industrial collaborators. We developed a pipeline of low TRL activities that has allowed us to continue with our collaboration even to date now. And as I said, there were joint papers and publications came out, and the whole research team interacted as part of it. Pete, next slide, please. I think for me, the biggest takeaway was from the scheme was the opportunities that the TRL scale-up offers, both in terms of research and in expanding the network and developing the skill sets required to deliver the TRL scale-up. Now, as part of the research and residence program, I think an important outcome will be the learning of the staged approach that could be followed for TRL progression, the technology readiness level progression, and the de-risking of the implementation of new ideas. And as part of this, I think the first area, academic collaborators will be very well aware of, developing and testing lab-based demonstrators first. But what is becoming really interesting in the research and residence program is how to take those demonstrators into the industrial scale facilities of the Catapult centers and the challenges and opportunities there. And finally, once we are able to do it, the opportunities that opens up for interactions with industrial partners or other end users, and how industrial testing and deployment could be approached beyond that point, perhaps through new sources of funding. So that was an important takeaway for me from the scheme. Pete, last slide, please. And this is a very quick overview of the career progression and the role this fellowship has played in my own career. So 2011, I started my professorial role in manufacturing informatics. From 2015 to 2018, I held the Catapult Fellowship, the now Research and Residence Program. And the skill sets that it developed for me in terms of dealing with or working with the Catapult centers, developing collaborations with them, also developing collaborations with the industrial partners, allowed me to have the Airbus RN Chair Award awarded in 2017. And then that followed on with the EPSRC Hub and Future Electrical Machines and Made Smarter Center. And I'm the Deputy Director of the EPSRC Hub now, and all the way to 2022 now, where I'm the Director of Research and Innovation. And what the main message for me here is that the interactions with the Catapult centers created a new skill set, allowed me the exposure to the innovation landscape and the TRL scale-up opportunities, and that has allowed me to progress in my career in looking at both research and innovation and at the interface between the two. I think that's it, Pete, and I think we can move on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ash. So thanks for giving us an overview of your experience with this type of scheme. We're now going to get into the nuts and bolts really of the scheme and what's going to be happening or what we need you to do over the next couple of months. So some key dates for your diaries. We're issuing the call today, so the call will be live as soon as this meeting finishes. And after the meeting, I will send out the expression of interest document and all of the call details to all of you. Key elements in this, we'd like you all to submit an expression of interest in 2 weeks' time. Well, everyone that wants to bid into this round of the call, like to submit an expression of interest. It's going to be some fairly basic information. It will be, what's your project title? A 200-word summary of what you think you want to do. Some information about you, and actually the most important bit, who are you talking to, or who would you like to talk to at the relevant catapults? And that's really because we've identified that co-creation is really important for these projects. We want you to talk to the catapults. So if people aren't talking to the catapults, we want to try and facilitate that. As soon as you've submitted that expression of interest, as long as it fits with one of the themes of the call, so net zero and sustainability, health and well-being, and resilience. And as long as you've been talking to someone in Catapult, we'll send you out a full application form and allow you to progress that further. So really, that expression of interest stage has two main functions. It checks that that you guys are talking to the catapults that you want to work with. And for us, it also gives us a measure of the likely balance of projects that we might get across the different themes, so that we can work out how many reviewers in each area we might need. You should then go on and start to develop your proposals and start to develop that full application. And as I said earlier, it's going to be important that you have letters of support, both from your own institution, which confirm the amount of time that you have available and the timeframes for that availability, and also with the catapult that you'd like to work with. So we've got a very strong indication there that you should have those letters of support in progress by the 10th of November. The full application closing date is going to be the 17th of November. That's 6 weeks from now. Recognise that that isn't a huge amount of time. However, we do want to get the first tranche of researchers starting, and we will be having multiple other opportunities to do this over the next 2 to 3 years. So we want to get the first group started. It's likely that we will be able to announce the final decisions for tranche 1 in early January. There's a very small chance we might get them out before Christmas, but early January is probably more realistic. And those decisions are essentially going to be made on 2 bases. First of all, does the project make sense? Is it a valid use of the funds, of the scheme's funds? And secondly, can the catapult that you want to work with support in the window of time that you are discussing? If that isn't the case, then you'll be able to have a conversation with the catapult and ensure that you can work out a suitable window, and you should also be able to subsequently go back into future rounds as well. So just because we can't fund something this time around, it doesn't immediately rule you out for future rounds of conversation. So they're the key point. In terms of what to do, after the event, we'll share the recording with the attendees. We'd encourage you to think about the scope identified by each of the catapults and think about how your ideas might link to those. If you don't see an obvious link and you've got a good idea, get in touch with us. We'll be able to discuss it with you and potentially suggest the people that you might want to be talking to. And as I said, we'll send out that expression of interest form and the call briefing document to everyone who's registered for the event. Once you've got that basic idea, discuss your idea with the catapult contacts, and you'll have seen their names and contact details today. And if you don't know who to talk to, again, get in touch. We'll put you in touch with the right people. In terms of the application process, by 20th of October, we'd like you to submit your expression of interest, and we'd like you to do that by sending it to rnrapplications@mrc.co.uk. That wasn't our chosen method of contact. We've had a few issues with the website. In future rounds, it will be via a portal on the website. However, we only got permission to use the website address yesterday, so it isn't live yet. And as I said, as long as your idea clearly aligns with one of the core objectives, we'll send you a full application form. Remember, we want to have got your letters of support underway for both your home institution and the catapults that you wish to work with. And then no later than the 17th of November, submit your full application. And again, we'd like you to do that by sending it to rnrapplications@amrc.co.uk. We'll then go through the review process. So your expression of interest will help us to know how many reviewers we need in each area. They will be members of our scientific advisory panels, and they will have relevant expertise in the theme areas. We'll be giving each of those reviewers probably no more than 5 applications to review. So we're going to need a few if we get an unbalanced set of applications. But again, the EOI process is going to help us to work out how many that is in advance. That should mean that we'll get reviews back quite quickly. We should have those reviews up by the 2nd week of December, and then there will be a final selection panel in the final week of December before the Christmas break. There is a chance that we will get decisions out to you before the Christmas break. It's probably more likely that it will be in early January. And then for those of you that are successful, post-award, would like you to confirm your start date for your placement with the catapult, and also confirm that back to the network managing team. So that, in all likelihood, that will be Christina Parry, who we introduced earlier. In terms of the placement, it's really important that you work alongside your catapult colleagues to achieve your objectives. This should be collaborative. You should be working together. Hopefully that makes sense from the call description earlier. In terms of review process, we're going to try and keep this as light touch as possible. We just want to ensure that you are making progress and that there aren't any blockers to that. So if a blocker does come up, tell us about it and we'll try to do something about it. As we get towards the end of, as you get towards the end of your placement, we'd like you to produce a brief final report on the key learning for the activity, and also a short video, which will be funded by us, documenting your placement and capturing the value add for you. We also want you to be really ready to promote the key learning of your activity. So we will ask you to attend network events and talk about how you're doing. And then also, we want you to, we know that we need to measure this after the event. Various people in the chat have been talking about soft and hard impact. We recognise that impact doesn't happen straight away. So we will be asking all of the successful applicants to complete a short evaluation of their experience, and there'll also be a brief 3 and 6 month post-placement follow-up with the network team to understand what's happening next, to understand what has happened since the end of the placement. So that's an overview of the scheme. As I said, most of this information was going to be covered in a lot more detail in the full call document, which we will send out to all of you post this meeting. We kind of preempted a few questions that we thought people would ask. I recognise we're now at 2 o'clock, so we are at the end of our allotted time, but I will cover some of these very quickly. And I'll also go all the way back up to the top of the list for questions. Before I do that, if you have to disappear, thank you very much for attending today. If you can hang around, I'll try and go through some of these questions straight away, but I'll go to Samit's question in the messenger window first. And that was about, as a bioscience person, how likely it is for a grant, which is an innovative engineering idea, to be supported instead of being told to apply to the Medical Research Council or the EPSRC, which does support it. So the EPSRC have given us a relatively wide scope for this call. And they've said, well, as long as it fits within one of those 3 themes, it can be considered. So it's difficult to say clearly whether we can fund a project without knowing the details of it. However, if it links to engineering and if it links to health and well-being, there's probably a good chance that we can fund it. And that applies for the other areas as well. Really, we're thinking about, well, does it align with the scope of the competition? And to a certain extent also, there must be a Catapult Centre that operates in that space. So in answer to your question, Samit, probably. It's difficult to say without knowing the exact details of the call or the proposal that you're talking about. But have a chat with us and try and we can try and help you shape that. We've also had a few questions in the chat about who can apply, and basically it can be anyone as long as they work for a university or an institution which can ordinarily allow them to receive Research Council funding. Then they should be able, then they can be in receipt of funding from this, and that means they can be in full or part-time employment with them, and they can be at multiple different stages of their career. But they do have to work for an organisation that can be in receipt of Research Council funding. Because recently there have been a number of catapults who have achieved that status as well, we probably would have to say that a catapult employee couldn't apply to work with certainly their own catapult. We'd have to discuss whether it would work if they wanted to work with another catapult. But if that's the case, get in touch and we can discuss it. This kind of question follows on from that, and is again, well, can I work with an existing collaborator? And in this case, I'm going to refer you back to the original themes of the call, and that's to generate new collaboration in new areas. So if it's an existing collaborator, you would have to convince us that this was in a new area that you weren't working in with them previously. So it's not necessarily a no, but you really have to demonstrate to us that this wouldn't happen previously. And that works in the same way for universities that might have existing links to catapults in some form. And there's a whole variety of ways that they work. We're not explicitly ruling it out this time, and I know that was the case previously. However, you are really going to have to convince the panel that this is a new relationship that's allowing something that wouldn't happen already without this happening. Similar to that, I guess if you work at a university which has a Catapult hosted at it and you would like to work with a Catapult elsewhere, then that probably is going to be allowed. So, but again, you've got to justify why that's the case. I think we have talked about the funding. I will leave this up briefly. I think we did have a question in the chat from one of the Catapult Centre employees that came up about what could the costs be used to fund the research time at the Catapult. I think I said that earlier on. These grants won't cover the Catapult costs themselves. However, the Catapults do have access to a funding pot that would allow them to pay for their own researcher time and any machine or equipment time that might be required. Oh, and this is an important one, how we have IP. So once the fellowships are awarded, successful applicants will need to sign a collaboration agreement, and that's going to be based on the Lambert principles. So the Lambert principles have set out a whole range of different set of principles for university and business collaboration agreements. I think it is principle 4A that applies most closely to university Catapult collaborations. If you search, or if you follow this web link below, it will take you to the UK government page which sets out those principles. So hopefully there should be a scenario there that works for you. Ultimately though, the network is not going to want to be a party in that IP agreement. We don't want to claim any IP ownership during the award or post award. This is going to be for yourself, the university that you work for, and for the relevant catapults to agree between yourselves. However, we obviously would recommend that you consider possibilities for wider dissemination later on, because the purpose of these awards is to create better impact for the UK. Oh, and what's the final question? What are the reporting requirements? Well, we want to keep these as light touch as possible. We do want to review progress and make sure things are happening. So there will be a review with the network manager at appropriate intervals through the residency to ensure that people are progressing and that there aren't anything stopping them. I mentioned towards the end of the project, we'll need you to create a brief final report with key learning from the activity and a short video, and we'll fund that and we'll make sure it happens. And perhaps key for us, at the end of the project, we also want you to think creatively about how to share the knowledge and understanding more widely outside the partnership. So we do want you to think about, well, what's the most appropriate way of doing that with the stakeholder groups that my knowledge, my expertise could be useful to. And we'll be thinking about that through a series of workshops with all of the funded researchers over the course of your awards. So we will put in place support to help you do that. There will be a small amount of funding to facilitate that. Realistically, it's not going to pay for large advertising campaigns or anything like that. But if you want to make a video, we can help you to do that. Potentially, if you want to make a website, we can help you to do that. But we'll have to see what it is and how far that money goes. So that was my final slide. Thank you for everyone that's hung around a little bit longer. I'm willing to stay around for a little bit longer to answer any questions that you might have. Can I suggest that if you have a question, you raise your hand and I will work through the list of hands that get raised over the course of that process. But before we do that, I would like to I would like to thank all of our speakers today for your contribution. I think you've all given very interesting presentations, which hopefully have helped all of the attendees to understand a little bit more about the scheme, about why it's in place, and also the areas of interest for the Catapult. So thank you to all of those. As I said, we'll make this recording available to you all on the website after the activity. and I will very shortly be sending out an email with all of the information about the call to everybody that's registered. So thank you for attending. So I think we've already got our first hand up. So Maggie, you had your hand up first.
Hi there, Pete. Thank you. I'd actually asked it in the comments, but I was wondering, in particular, so I'm from Edinburgh Napier. I'm the Business Development and Relationship Manager working on KE projects and supporting the academics. So I think there'd be a number of academics who could be interested in this, but we have very little to no relationship with the Catapult Network. So I was wondering about, would favour be given to ones with that existing relationship, I guess, because letters of support in this short timescale? Are we thinking that East would be another call for the RIR? And actually what the timescales are around that 5K exploratory fund that you talked about?
So the logistical challenges of putting it in place for the first event beat us in the end. So the intention was that we were trying to do that from day one. We haven't quite got there. I think obviously what we are trying to do is to encourage new relationships between individuals and universities that haven't engaged with the Catapult network previously, and we are trying to make the barriers as low as possible. So I guess the key thing is to have those conversations as early as possible and work out what the mutual areas of interest are between the researchers and the catapults. The expression of interest phase is going to be really simple. It's going to be 200 words. What's the basic idea that you would like to develop further with the catapult? So it shouldn't be too onerous to put that together in the next couple of weeks. And actually, as long as the idea isn't completely outside of the scope of the call, so as long as it fits into net zero and sustainability, health and well-being and resilience, we're going to send out a full application form anyway. So I think it would only be in a few rare cases where an idea just completely doesn't fit within those areas that we would say, well, actually, maybe this isn't the right call. But what we are trying to do is to facilitate those conversations so that you can get something in place with the right catapults quite quickly. So if you've got people in mind, and we can, unfortunately, I've not been able to follow the entire conversation in the chat because there's been quite a lot of it. If you've got people in mind, drop us an email and we can try and put them in touch with the right people at the right catapult as quickly as we can, and start those conversations off as quickly as possible. So,
brilliant, thank you. Thank you.
Priority given to existing relationships over new ones. Essentially, it will come down to the strength of the idea.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Pete. That makes sense.
Thank you, Maggie. Did we have any other questions? I don't.
Pete, I think there's a question in the chat.
Oh, there's a question in the chat. Okay. So yeah, so I guess there are 2 points of entry for the points of contact. So we are trying to do things both regionally and by theme. So we've introduced the theme points of contact in the presentation earlier today. Obviously, we have good distribution around the UK of those points of contact as well. So all of our co-investigators have said that they are happy to be contacted by people in their local area, or in fact anywhere else in the UK for that matter, to facilitate those conversations. So I think it was Andrew, I think it's Finch in the chat that's asked that question. If you're in the Southwest, then I think Ben would be more than happy to take that inquiry, or equally Fiona Charnley, as they're both based in that area. If you are based in other areas of the UK, there will be other points of contact. But even if you can't find a point of contact in your region, feel free to get in touch with either Christina or myself via the RNR applications at amrc.email address, or through Twitter, which is live, and LinkedIn, which was set up the other day, so it's looking a bit blank at the moment. But I've had a number of people try and contact me via those two things during the meeting today. So feel free to use whichever means of communication is the most, is easiest for you, and we will try and facilitate those conversations. Do we have any other questions, or shall I just scroll up the list of questions? I think there's a number of you trying to make contact with particular between particular universities and the catapults. So if you haven't done that already, hopefully we can get in touch and we'll try and facilitate that. Ben has answered some of these. So unless there's any extra points there to add, I think Ben has done quite a good job of doing that. Yes, various people have asked, are we sharing the slides and the video of this? The answer is yes. We'll certainly send that out with the information post-meeting. Although I might have to think that because we had a video in the slide, it ended up being quite a large file, so I might have to figure out how to do that effectively. It might be done via the website in the next couple of days. But certainly we'll send out the documents post-meeting. Lots of good chat about different projects there. I can't see any other specific questions. So if there are not any other questions from people on the chat, I think I might call us to an end there. And again, thank you for joining us today. I think we've been very heartened by the number of people that have joined us. I think we were sat at 130 people for most of the session, and hopefully that's going to generate a good number of applications. Well, actually, there was one more question that I saw pop up in the chat, and this was about the number of residencies that would be funded in tranche 1. And I don't think we have a set number in mind. I think there is going to be obviously a balance that can be struck between the number of residencies that can be supported by each of the catapults in a certain time period. So we've worked on the basis that it would be quite nice for each catapult to get at least one R&R in each tranche. That gives us a minimum of 9, because there are 9 catapults. We will have to work out what to a certain extent, what the supportable number is in tranche 1, because there are obviously going to be constraints around people's time to support. But we have funding available to fund somewhere in the region of 80 R&R residencies at the moment, and that's quite a significant number. So if you go on the basis of splitting them evenly, that might give us an indication of 20 funded placements this time. Okay, and I think that definitely is the last question in the chat. I think I've trawled through them now. So again, thank you for joining us today, and we'll look forward to you getting in touch to talk about your ideas and your proposals.